Welcome to Everything About Web. My name is Jamie Cavanaugh, and this is the Column CSS Layout 8-Hour Day Part 1 tutorial. So let's take a look at the design that we're going to work on today. So this is a website called 8-Hour Day, and I picked this site because it's well designed and it has a layout that's pretty common. It's basically a one column, but it has this sort of a little bit of a magazine format down here with these 4 columns. So we're going to talk about how to build this using a column CSS layout. And here is an image of how we would go about slicing this design. So notice that we're not slicing any of this navigation up here. I'm going to be calling this nav, this one secondary, but those are going to be HTML text created using a list tag. But we do need to slice the logo, this little tagline. I'm going to slice this little blog navigation, the main photo, and then these 4 featured photos. So this is the basic way that we would slice this page and optimize our images in preparation for building this. And wanted to go ahead and just take a look at how we might want to approach building a div structure for this page. So here is just this design with just some outlines to show you how we could approach this. So the yellow is the header tag, and we're going to need to have inner divs here for our other content. This green div is the content div. This is going to be the main photo. We're going to have this featured section where we'll have our 4 columns. And then on the very bottom, we've got our footer, which we'll also need to have a div for our navigation and also our copyright. So that's basically how we're going to approach building the page. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've already optimized the images. So we've got an images folder here, but we're going to want to go ahead and set up our structure. So we're going to organize our files right from the very beginning of our project. So I have a folder called 8-Hour Day. And inside of here, I'm going to put create a final web folder. And I'm also going to have a source file folder. Okay. And inside of these folders, I'm going to place some other files I have here. So I've got a PSD, a Photoshop document of my layout. So I'm going to put that in my source file folder. And then here are the images that I've already sliced and optimized for the web. So I'm going to place that images folder in my final web folder. So really critical to set up your file organization before you get started building your page. Okay, so moving on to Dreamweaver, I'm going to start my new HTML page here. And I'm going to give it a title. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. Index.html. I'm going to save that to my 8-Hour Day into my final web folder. Okay. And now I'm going to be all ready to put in my code here for my column structure. Now, those of you who have watched, previous videos know that I never want to have to build anything where I'm having to rebuild something that I've built many times before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get some what I'm going to call starter code. So let me go ahead and get that. And I would recommend, always keeping this somewhere where it's easy for you to find it. And I know where mine is here. Okay, so here is my basic HTML for a one-column layout. So this could be in, a web page that you've bookmarked, or what I also do is just keep a folder with my, I'm going to call them templates, with my HTML and CSS for a one-column, a two-column, and a three-column structure. So I'm going to be able to just copy. I'm just going to copy from the head to the body, because I'm going to place it inside of the HTML tags that Dreamweaver has already set up in my page. So notice I'm just replacing from the head tag to the body. Okay. So that gives me my wrapper div, my header, my content, and my footer, which is what I need. And then notice here that I've got the basic CSS for a one-column layout. So I'm going to copy that. Oops, make sure I have all of it. And I'm going to go ahead and create my CSS for this project. Okay. So I'm going to open up New and select CSS, say Create. I'm going to paste this in here, and I'm going to give it a name. So this is going to be saved as style.css, and it's going to go in my final web folder. Okay, so we know that my HTML page is going to reflect any of the styling that I have in my CSS, because I have that link to my external CSS file called style.css. So now as I make any kind of changes to my CSS, it will show up in the design of my page. So let me go ahead and title my page, because that's a very important step. And save this. Okay, so now I've got the basic, the basic divs in there, but I'm going to need to add some additional divs into it. So I'm going to want to do that right away. So in my header div, what am I going to need to add? I'm going to need to add, if we just go back and take a look, I'm going to need to add a div for my navigation. I'm going to need to add a div for what I'm calling the secondary. I also have this little blog link. I'm going to need to add that, the logo, the little studio tagline. So let's go ahead and do that. So making sure my cursor is in between the opening and closing header div, I'm going to go up to Insert Layout Objects and select Div Tag. And I'm going to add my nav div. And make sure that when you add your divs that they're being saved, that the rule is being defined, I should say, in the style.css. So notice this drop down on the bottom. You should be sure to select style.css. So that'll make sure that as Dreamweaver inserts these divs, that indeed they're also showing up in your CSS. So if I look at the CSS styles window, I can see that indeed this nav is showing up, this nav div. So that's great. Okay, let me add another one. I'm going to need one for my secondary nav. So I'm just going to call it secondary. Say new CSS rule. Again, make sure it's showing, it's being defined in your style.css. Say OK, 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 and I'm going to just make sure my window's always open here so I can sort of watch what's going on here. So again, it's showed up here, which is great. And now I'm going to add another div, and this is for that blog, that little link. So I'm going to call it blog and say OK. Okay. And the next one is for my logo. And then notice how I'm making sure that each of these divs are opening and closing before I add the next one. So they should not be nested. They are nested inside of the header div, but they're not nested inside of one another. So the last one in the header here is studio for that little studio tagline. Okay, so we can see in the design view, nothing real exciting going on, but we can see that we've got all of our divs added, so that's fantastic. Let's move down now to our content div. And in our content div, we're going to add a div for that main photo. Then we're going to add a featured div, and inside of that featured div, we're going to put in those 4 feature divs that are creating sort of that, I call it like a magazine column format. So going back up to layout objects, div tag, we're going to call this first one main, photo. And then the next one, make sure that you do select div tag, not AP div. I'm going to call this featured. Okay, now inside of the featured, I'm going to insert those 4 other divs. So here is a case where I do want to make sure I'm nesting. So inside my featured div, right inside of here, I'm going to add my div tag. I'm going to call it feature 1. And then right below that, I'm going to insert feature 2. And you can see there's a fair amount of just repetition here. I'm going to do another one. And you'll get pretty quick with this as you obviously do it frequently. And then I'm going to add my final one, which is feature 4. And notice I have my CSS styles opened over here on the right. I'm just watching to be sure that all of my divs are being added into the CSS, because it can happen sometimes where Dreamweaver has a little hiccup and doesn't add it. So you want to be sure that that is going on. And now finally the footer, I want to add inside of here 2 divs. One's for the footer nav and the other one is for the copyright. So go back up to layout objects div, and I'm going to call this footer underscore nav. And then right below this is going to be the copyright. Okay, so there we go. So now that we've got all of our divs, all of our containers basically for this page, the next thing I want to do is just add some. I want to add the content, meaning that I want to add the images and get it started, so that in our next part 2, we can go about you really doing the styling and the CSS for this. So what do I need to add here? I need to add my navigation. Okay, so again, if we go back here, just move this over, we'll see that we have navigation here. This div is going to contain our 4 sections. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to delete this little dummy text right here. And now, as you can imagine, I have added navigation before. So I'm going to use, again, I'm going to repurpose some code. So here's some HTML to make a list, which is how we're going to build this navigation. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in there. So this is just a list, an unordered list. Obviously, I'm going to have to go in here and change the name of the navigation. So I'm going to do that. So the first one is our work. And let's see, what are the other ones? News, about, and contact. Okay, great. So again, needs a lot of styling, needs some help for sure, but we're going to do that in our next tutorial. For the secondary, I also have some navigation, so I'm going to use a list again. So I'm going to just copy and paste what I just did above, but I only have 2 sections in that, and if we go back to our design, one of them is follow us on Twitter and the other one is join our mailing list. So, oops. So follow us on Twitter, join our, oops, I know this is uppercase for mailing list. Okay, great. And for the blog part, we have an image for that. So I'm going to insert this, or sorry, I'm going to delete that dummy little copy here and instead insert my image. So I'm going to go up to Insert Image, go to my Images folder. There's my blog PNG that I'm going to insert in there. Okay, again, not in the right place at all, but we're not going to worry about that right now. For the logo, I have an image for that, so I'm going to insert that. And then for my little studio tagline, I also have an image. Called it Studio. Okay, and then finally I have a image for the background of my header, because if we notice the design, it has this little bit of detail to it, so I'm going to add that, but that actually goes into the background of my header div. So I'm going to go over here in my CSS styles and select header, that div, and I'm going to edit it. I'm going to edit the background because I want to add a background image to it. So in my images folder, I have a PNG file called header. I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And there's that background. But you can see everything's spilling out because I haven't styled or positioned it. So, you know, we'll have to deal with that in a little bit in the next tutorial. Okay, so now moving down into the content div, I'm going to put in my main photo. So again, I just deleted that dummy text and making sure my cursor's in between the opening and closing div for main photo. I'm going to go up to image and pick that main home 1 file, which is the main image. Okay. And then in the featured section, I also have some images. So for feature 1, I'm going to go ahead and insert that image, and it's called feature 1. Notice how I was very clever and smart about the way that I've named my images. You're going to want to do that same thing. Because it's just going to make it really difficult for you to find your images if you don't give them names that make it really clear what they are. So let me just put a little space here so you can see what's going on. So in feature 3, I'm going to insert the image for feature 3. Feature 4, which is that last 4th column, also has an image, so I'm going to insert that. Okay, and now we're going to go down to our footer. We've got some nav there, and the nav's actually the same structure as the nav on top. So I'm just going to, again, copy and paste my code from my top nav and just paste it in here. It's going to be styled differently, but it's basically the same structure, the same sections. So I'm going to do that. And then I have some copyright information here. So I'm going to delete this. And my copyright information, if we look here, is right down here on the bottom left. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that text, and I want to go and create a HTML special character for my copyright symbol. So notice under Insert, HTML, Special Characters, Copyright. Okay. And then I've got my text. Oops. And you know, this text would be in your Photoshop document also, so you might want to just go to that. That'd be probably a much smarter way to do it, and just copy and paste it into that. So let's see where we're at. Okay, so here's where we're at. We've got almost everything in there. We've got our basic assets, but it obviously doesn't look at all the way we want it to look. So we're going to have to do some work with CSS in order to now style our page and make it look exactly the way that we want it to look. But we've got a great start. We basically have everything for the most part added to the HTML. There's still some text we're going to add in our next tutorial. But in our next tutorial, we'll complete this page by going ahead and styling the rest of it. So I hope you will join me in part 2 of this tutorial. Thanks for watching Everything About Web. Please visit us on the web at www.everythingaboutweb.com and on YouTube and Twitter.